Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. My name is Casey Murphy, and I'm ACT's Director of Programs and Events. I want to thank you for joining us today for ACT's first of two webinars this month entitled Making the Connection, Partnering with Your Transit System. Before we hear from our presenters this afternoon, I wanted to quickly take care of a few housekeeping items. First, all attendees are on mute during this webinar. If you have a question or have a problem hearing us, please type it in the chat box located in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to answer all your questions as the webinar gets going. Second, we will be hosting a Q&A at the end of the webinar, but please feel free to type in your questions as we go in the Q&A box, not the chat, in the Q&A box located in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Please note that when you're typing in a question, if you could also type in who the question is for, we'd greatly appreciate it. Finally, this session is being recorded and we'll have the recording up on the ACT website within 24 hours after the presentation ends. Now I'd like to go ahead and pass things over to David Strauss, ACT's Executive Director, to give a few updates on what ACT currently has going on. David?
Thank you, Casey. Good afternoon. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. As the premier association for TDM professionals, our goal is to build a strong community of individuals and organizations working to advance and implement TDM at their work sites and within their communities. Webinars like today's are an important benefit to you as a member of ACT, providing you with valuable information on latest trends and important knowledge to make you a more impactful in the work that you do. To each of our non-members joining us today, let me say welcome. I invite you to become a member of the ACT community. I guarantee you that membership will be a valued investment in your professional growth. After today's event, you'll receive a note from Elizabeth Denton, our Membership Experience Manager, offering an opportunity to connect and learn more about the association. I hope to see you soon as a member. I know we have a full program. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to update everyone on some news from ACT. I want to remind you all that Congressman Blumenauer from Oregon will be joining us next week for our member policy briefing on March 17th. Blumenauer is a true ally of TDM and a staunch advocate for bicycling and public transit. I encourage you to register and join us for this important update. With the passage of the American Rescue Plan this week, Congress will start to refocus its efforts, and infrastructure and transportation authorization, which expires in September, are set to be top priorities and will present important opportunities for ACT to advocate for TDM. Registration is also open for our Future of Commuting Summit, which is a half-day virtual event, hopefully one of our last virtual events, that will present ideas around future trends, planning needs, and the lasting impacts of the pandemic on commuting. There will be ample time to participate in interactive small group discussions during the event as well, which is modeled after last year's very popular TDM forum. It was wonderful to see such a tremendous response to our extra early bird discount that expired last week for the 35th Annual International Conference, which is to be held in person August 1st to 4th in Disney World. Registration continues to be open for that event. Planning is also continuing to move forward, and in the coming weeks, a more detailed program will be released, including the announcement, hopefully, of our first keynote speaker. Please know that we will be focusing significant attention on creating a safe event for all that will be joining us in person. You can learn more about our safety protocols and register for the conference on our website. Now on to today's webinar, Making the Connection, Partnering with Your Transit System. TDM is most successful when you bring all stakeholders together to focus on collaborative efforts to improve a community's transportation systems. This session will provide unique perspectives from 3 different sectors, addressing the ways which some of them approach collaboration with their transit systems, which play a central role within any community's mobility network. We'll learn how these groups create incentive programs for transit agencies and influence planning and operations. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speakers. And we got 4 of them this time. We have Lakisha Hull, who serves as Charlotte Department of Transportation's Development Services Division Manager. She leads a team of engineers, project managers, and inspectors responsible for processing land development projects and right-of-way management permits. With 18 years of professional experience, Lakisha has worked in cities that have served as few as 40,000 residents to working in America's second largest city, Los Angeles, with over 4 million residents. Recently, Lakisha has been involved in coordinating projects and plans for incorporating TDM strategies in urban areas and redevelopment sites. Lakisha holds a dual master's degree in architecture and city planning from the University of Pennsylvania. She's AICP as well as LEED AP certified. Jason Lawrence joined the Charlotte Area Transit System, CATS, in 2000 and currently serves as Senior Transportation Planner. For the past 20 years, he's built a reputation of collaboration across the Charlotte region. Since 2015, he's focused on a comprehensive update of CATS's 2030 transit system plan. Through a proactive public and stakeholder outreach program, the update achieved a broad base of regional support that will guide CATS's transit efforts for the next 15 to 20 years, including the development of new light rail and bus rapid transit lines. Jason also directs bus route planning and scheduling, oversees a bus priority study that, when complete, will provide CATS with a comprehensive capital program to improve speed and reliability of service. In 2017, Jason was selected as the City of Charlotte Employee of the Year. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Earth Science from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. We also have Jay Faught, who is the TDM Program Manager for the San Diego Association of Governments. He's responsible for implementing programs and strategies to reduce drive-alone rates and in turn reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the region. He leads a variety of programs that include a subsidized van pool program, incentives for taking transit and carpooling, telework assistance, community bike parking, bike education, and a guaranteed ride home program. Jay has worked at SANDAG for 5 years, but has been working within TDM programs in New Mexico and California for more than 15 years. And to kick us off, we have Ronit Dancis, Director of the TMA within the Tysons Partnership, where she drives the partnership's transportation and mobility network, catalyzing the transformation of Tysons into a walkable, bikeable, transit-based city. She has served on the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Transportation Planning Board's Citizen Advisory Committee since 2016. Before becoming Tysons TMA Director, she led successful efforts to build the Purple Line in suburban Maryland. Ronit, I will turn the webinar over to you.
Very much, David, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I apologize for not being able to get my phone to turn off while you guys have to see the screen, but here we go. What I'm going to talk about today briefly is public-private coordination between the public and private sectors in a crisis. And you will never guess what crisis it was if you've been awake for the past year or so. I'll give you a hint, it involves a pandemic. So just a quick stage set. Tysons is located in Northern Virginia, just outside the Washington, D.C., and our nation's capital. You will see that traditionally there have been any number of highways that people have used to access Tysons. Since 2014, we have had 4 metro stations, which you can see right here. As of, let's say, just before the pandemic hit, this was a region. These 4 square miles had approximately 125,000 employees coming in every day, residential population of about 25,000. And ever since the metro stations opened in 2014, there was the mode split changed a little bit at that time, and we went down so that our SOV mode split was 70%, and 30% came in by other modes. And obviously, so that was the snapshot of the 4. There has been an immense amount of development, redevelopment, and growth in Tysons. So some of the metro stations, particularly the McLean Metro Station, where Capital One had just opened a new building hosting some 10,000 employees, as well as over here in the Greensboro Station, where another redevelopment called the Borough had also opened. those stations were seeing just explosive metro rail ridership. If you compare it year after year, it was, each quarter it was something like 18%, then it went up to 20%, 25%. So this was a consistent growth. And again, about 120,000 employees in these 4 square miles. Many of them are office workers, but also 2 very large malls, and all the associated maintenance, janitorial, service workers that come not just with a mall, but also with large amounts of office space. And Tysons was also known for being near the site of some of the worst traffic in the area, and one of the more notorious commutes if you came in by car. And so that was, of course, before the pandemic. And then once the pandemic hit, as so many other areas did, commuting just really went down. The metro system, Washington D.C.'s metro system, responded after seeing huge ridership drops, and also while trying to deal with revenue issues and safety issues in the beginning of the pandemic, and shut down something like 17 stations. And you can see, this is the map. These are everything with a little red tag. That is a station that was closed. And for those of us, Tysons is over here. These are the 4 metro stations in Tysons. Again, those are the 4 metro stations anchoring 4 square miles of what had been over 100,000 employees on a daily basis. You'll see that 2 of those stations were closed. So that was part 1. Part 2 of that was fairly routine, and in that way we weren't necessarily any different from any other area, either in the DC capital region or throughout the country dealing with a pandemic. Where things got a little bit more interesting was that the metro system in DC is about 40 years old and requires a certain amount of maintenance, which had been planned for the summer. And understandably, looking at really low ridership, the transit system decided that they were going to take advantage of this opportunity to do a whole bunch, to sort of supercharge the maintenance and repair work that they were doing on a variety of stations over here on the Orange and Silver Line in the summer of 2020. Originally, they had planned to single track. They decided to just shut them down altogether. This announcement was made in late April. And we were told, well, the stations will be closed in a couple of weeks. We think they'll reopen around Labor Day. Don't really know. We'll let you know. And just to recap again, we had explosive ridership, and then you can see it fell off the cliff. And you can also sort of tell when exactly that happened. And just to give you an idea, this is some of the kind of platform work that was done. I wanted to give you guys one kind of semi-pretty picture. And obviously this is work that's most easily done when the station is closed and nobody is using it. Now, and of course, there was some shuttles that were set up to replace the rail service that was not available. And this is an example of the complicated, but nonetheless but this is the free shuttle service that was there. So where did this put the employers and landowners and mall owners in Tysons? And just for those of you taking a look right here at Tysons Corner Center, that location is next to 2 very large malls, one of which remained open throughout and is a major bus. There are thousands of people working there. That remained a key center of economic activity and retail activity throughout. If you look down at the McLean Metro Station, that was actually next to an essential employer that was doing work for the federal government, sort of high security, high tech stuff. You cannot take that at home. It has to be done in secured areas on the campus. They switched to going 24 hours a day, 3 shifts. So there we were in the spring, summer. The situation was that because the McLean and Greensboro stations had been closed previously, they were not eligible to have even the free bus shuttle service to make that the other stations were. We were looking at even very long commutes, very little service, and a region that had been, an employer region that had been based on these 4 metro stations that were so important to us, was sort of having an existential crisis. And there was also a great deal of information that needed to be passed out by the transit agency. An example, of course, is this particular map of which shuttle was available when and how you would get it. But what was particularly interesting as we set, so to meet this need, we set up what at the time were weekly meetings between the public sector and the private sector, the mall owner and operator, large employers, landlords, large office landlords. And obviously at the time, what started out with a sort of a one-way communications thing in terms of information coming from the transit agency to the employers, during the pandemic, and because of the nature of the pandemic, actually became more of a two-way street. In the beginning, it was a question of, there were little details, and this is actually sort of the first meeting, what information, questions from the public and about employers about safety issues. This is before the APTA toolkit came out. Would there be mask wearing on the shuttles? One sort of logistical issue is that, again, one of the metro stations that did have free bus shuttle service, that those buses were picking up and off right at pretty much the same space that any number of employee shuttles had also been using. So there was a certain amount of who's going to pick up where, when, and how. And of course, we did have 2 stations that were entirely closed that didn't even have bus shuttle service. And those stakeholders were very, very curious to hear from the transit agency, what information did they need to justify providing bus service to those stations? That was particularly important to the landowners and employers in and around the McLean and Greensboro station. And obviously, we were very eager to hear the end date of the shutdown and the level of service expected when it would end. So some of this falls into the traditional communications between a transit agency and the public, where frequently TDM providers and large employers are sort of basically a microphone and a loudspeaker for the transit agency in terms of getting information out. But what happened during the pandemic is we realized there was a need for a back and forth. Because from the transit agency's perspective, they needed to know, when were large employers returning? If you've got, one station, again, I'll mention it, McLean had 10,000 Capital One employees right there at that station. So Capital One's return policy became of key interest because that was, that along with that of other large employers would play a role in how service would be, how sort of the reopening and recovery would occur with rail, the pace of it, what was needed, particularly as we were from the transit agency's perspective, they were very eager to make sure that the trains were not crowded, so that they wanted to be ahead of demand, and to get a sense of being ahead of demand required communication with large employers. So that is how we sort of got through the summer and into the fall. And what started as sort of an emergency situation became an ongoing collaboration between the public and the private sector, as we have, the transit agency continues to need information about employers' plans to return. Will there be a new work from home paradigm? What will when are various employers expecting to reopen, and in what way? And the safety information has gone down a little bit, but that's still, we expect that may be a question as well. So this has actually what began in a crisis has turned into a very positive collaboration, very productive collaboration between the public and the private sector. And I'm very much, so we're glad to be through the worst of it. We are looking forward to laying the groundwork to more extensive projects, such as those you'll be hearing from the people following me. And so that's what I have. And the next person after me is Jay, so I'm going to cue him up just a sec. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ronit. And it was a great presentation. I'm sure you have a lot of questions at the end. It's been about 10 years since I've been to that area, so it's interesting to see how things have progressed and how you handled that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and bear with me here just a minute. You're probably going to see a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. Let's see, let's start there. And I think I also need to change my display settings. So I think you should just be seeing the full screen now. Okay, thanks for the thumbs up, Casey. So it's working right. So again, my name is Jay Faught, and I'm the iCommute Program Manager at SANDAG, or the San Diego Association of Governments, and we are the region's transportation planning agency. And iCommute is the TDM division within SANDAG. And today, I really wanted to focus on the Tri-Transit program. And this is a program that we developed in partnership with our local transit agencies to generate long-term transit riders. And so today I want to really walk with you step by step of how and why we put this program together and what has worked with this particular program. So first of all, I think I need to begin with some details about our employer program, because that's really at the center of a lot of the programs that we work with in TDM here at SANDAG. We have a pretty robust employer outreach program where we work with about 200 employers in the San Diego region to help them develop their commuter programs. We work with those employers to actually survey their employees to find out how they're getting to and from work. And after that survey is completed, then our GIS team at SANDAG then creates a map that shows basically where their employees are commuting from, and how how it also relates to the transit lines, the bike paths, and the park and ride lots. The survey also measures their interest in using alternative transportation. And then through this process, we then create a trip reduction plan for each employer that includes incentives for each sustainable mode that scores high in the survey. So when we were developing incentives for transit, we knew we wanted to provide something that was meaningful and measurable. So we came up with a project goal is to create lasting behavior change by providing commuters with an incentive to try transit. So that's what we want to do. Now, how are we going to get there, and how are we going to make that happen? So we're not a transit agency, so we had to reach out to our local transit operators in the San Diego region, the Metropolitan Transit System, or MTS, and the North County Transit District, or NCTD. And we really forged a formal partnership with them. So we outlined everything that we wanted to do in an MOU between the three agencies. And we update that MOU each year to include any changes and budget requirements. And that, I have to say, that has been really helpful for us in really outlining who is responsible for what. And it outlines basically the product requirements and the timelines that we need to get those things done as well. So that's been very helpful. So we agreed that we wanted to have a structured program where we could track key performance metrics and also hold the participants accountable, or have them at least make a commitment to the program. So I've been part of campaigns in past jobs at transit agencies where we've actually given out a free day pass. And we don't always know with a free day pass whether if people are really using it, or at least we don't know if they're going to continue to be transit riders after that. And also, most studies show that it takes at least 21 days to begin forming a habit. So we wanted to give people that chance to truly make a change in the way that they're commuting. And of course, we also needed to work within our budget requirements. So what we decided to do was give out free 30-day transit passes to eligible employees in our employer program. The passes are loaded onto a Compass card, which is our smart card technology here in San Diego. And the employees can use the pass on any of the transit options that we have here in our region. So that includes the buses, the rapid ride routes, the coaster, which is the commuter train between San Diego and Oceanside, or the trolley and sprinter lines, which is our light rail here in San Diego. So we ask all the users to tap their pass on the card reader every time that they ride. So then that allows us to measure the ridership during this trial period. Again, the free pass is not open to the general public. It's only offered through our employer accounts. And while the pass is free to the user, it's not actually free to us. The transit agencies didn't really want to just hand out free transit passes to us. They wanted us to have a stake in the game, and we agree. And so SANDAG actually purchases the passes from the transit agencies at a 50% discount. And so the pass price range, full price range, is from $72 for a regional pass to about $181 for a 3-zone coaster pass. And so what I do each year is I budget about $12,000 to purchase passes for this program. And then at the end of each quarter, what I do is I provide a report to each of the transit agencies to let them know how many passes we distributed, what the activation rate was, what the ridership was, what type of passes that people used as part of the program. So we want to be sure that we're handing out passes to people that will have the most success in being long-term transit riders. So we developed criteria for both employers and employees to be eligible to participate. For employers, the work location must be within a half mile of a transit stop. We found that, especially choice riders and new people to riding transit, find anything more than a half mile as a barrier. There needs to be sufficient and reasonable transit options. If the only way to get to the employer location is through long bus rides and mini transfers, really it's not going to be a great fit for that particular employer. So we won't really be working with them on that tri-transit program. We have many other incentives and programs that we can focus on through our van pool and carpool campaigns, and we have other incentives for each of those modes that we can focus on, but transit probably wouldn't be the best fit for them. And also, in order for the employers to participate, they need to actually have completed a survey, the survey that I talked about earlier. And that survey must indicate that there's a strong interest from their employees to use transit as well. And as I mentioned before as well, we wanted the participants to make a commitment to the program. So we require the employees to sign an agreement with SANDAG that says they will commit to using transit at least 8 days during the month or during the trial period. Now, I understand that's not the 21 days that's needed to actually begin forming that habit, but we know that life happens, and that when somebody's beginning a new transit, a new commute, that going cold turkey and doing it immediately with every day using transit might be a challenge. So we felt that eight days on that, taking transit 8 days was very reasonable. And when we began the program, also MTS, our San Diego Transit Agency, was very adamant about only offering this to new people. So one of the requirements was that they never have used transit to commute to that work site. That makes complete sense. They didn't want us giving out passes to their existing riders. I will say, though, that through the pandemic over the last year, we have decided that the transit ridership has certainly dropped off. So we're going to be using this program to actually entice people to come back to transit. So we're going to be offering this program to former transit riders as well. So we're hoping that's going to be a way to bring people back to transit by offering this program to them when their employers start opening back up and going back to work. We also require the employees to provide to finish and complete a survey at the end of the trial period to find out what worked for them and what didn't. So when an employer meets all the requirements and their employees are interested in learning about transit, we schedule a lunch and learn or a group presentation. During the pandemic, we're doing virtual presentations. We send out an online Google RSVP form for the presentation, so we know how many people to expect at the meeting. If a lot of people are going to be there, then we can get support from our iCommute team members and help us with that presentation and trip planning event. And it's a group effort. So we invite our transit partners to also come and give presentations about how to use their system and how to use the smart cards and identify which routes are near those work sites that will work for those employees. We also use this as an opportunity to talk about our programs, such as the Guaranteed Ride Home program and how to register for a bike locker if they want to combine part of their trip with a bike commute. There's about 60 transit stations in San Diego that have bike lockers at the transit stations. So that is something we can explain during that presentation. And at the end, we also then meet with everybody that attended and provide them with a personalized trip plan so they know exactly how to get from their house to work. If the commute will take them hours to get to work, it's just too long and it's not going to be the right fit for that particular user. Even if somebody comes in and says, I don't really mind that long commute, it turns out that they really do, because they don't wind up activating those passes and using them. So really, we tell them that it's not the right fit for them. But if it is the right fit and it does look good in the trip plan, then what we do is we have them sign the agreement and then we hand over a transit pass to them right then and there, and they can begin using it. in just a couple of days. One thing that we've learned through this process has been just how important communication is. The participants actually have 30 days to activate their pass or the passes expire. The first time that they tap their card onto a reader, it will activate their card and their 30-day trial period will begin. So we send out an email within 48 hours of giving them the pass to remind them about that timeline. We then send out reminders each week until the 30-day period is up, and we remind them that SANDAG is actually paying for the pass, whether they use it or not. So once we started sending out those reminders, it really did bring up our activation rates. So sometimes people just need that extra nudge and reminder. Maybe they might find it a little bit annoying, but it has been helpful for us to get people to activate their cards. And then towards the end of the period, we encourage people to buy a new pass on their own for the following month and use that same Compass card. We continue to track the ridership for another 30 days after the free trial period to see how many people continue using transit. So then that brings us over to the results. To date, we have had 57 employer events and we've distributed 57 transit passes, and 54% of the participants have activated their passes. Of those that have activated their passes, 47% of them have gone on to buy a new monthly pass on their own and continue to ride transit. Now, of course, I would love to see those activation rates much higher than that. However, we do consider this a great success. I think 54% activation rate is great. According to pointofsale.com, the average redemption rate of a coupon is only about 2 to 5%. It's not exactly the same here, but we're way above that. And so we do consider this quite successful. The program has also generated almost 9,800 transit trips during the trial period. So it's clearly bringing new people to transit that were not riding before. Because keep in mind, these were people that never have commuted to transit to get to work before. So as I mentioned, we also follow up with a survey, and 72% of participants say that they will continue to use transit. So even though everyone doesn't buy a pass the next month, people say they've had a good experience and they're going to continue to use transit at least occasionally. And then in the survey, we also asked them about reliability, frequency, comfort, the safety, and the cost of their commute. And as you can see here, we've had some pretty good results. We share those results with the transit agencies so they can learn what their commuters are saying and make any changes if necessary. And then, sometimes we hear from transit riders or people who haven't ridden transit before that maybe they may not feel safe, but after they get on the train or the trolley or the bus, 84% of people said they felt safe using transit. So these are some good results there. Now, I just wanted to end with saying that, of course, most of these statistics were done before the end of the pandemic. But as more people return to work and traffic picks up, we think the Tri-Transit program is really going to be a good incentive to get people back on the buses and trains in San Diego. So we look forward to using that and getting people back on transit. So I look forward to answering your questions at the end, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it on over to Jason.
Thank you, Jay, very much. Let me get my screen shared here. Bear with me just for a moment. And all right, should be seeing my screen now. Thank you all very much. I am Jason Lawrence with Charlotte Area Transit System, and I look forward to really almost like a two-parter presentation, because I'm going to hit on some of the high points, and then Lakisha is really going to get into some of the details about how we incorporate TDM within our land development community. And some of the pieces of my presentation, that beyond piece that I'm talking about there, is how we're trying to update a lot of our planning documents and planning efforts so that we can be more reactive, proactive rather, instead of reactive to development pressures within Charlotte-Mecklenburg.
Hey, Jason, I don't think it's in presentation mode. You may just want to, is it on your end?
It is, but let me fix my display settings here. Is that better?
Should be. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. So what's going on in Charlotte right now is our multiple mobility efforts underway. We're looking at an opportunity to a transformational mobility network across all of Mecklenburg County. That's the county that Charlotte is in. of looking at expanding and potentially going for referendum to fund multiple mobility efforts. We have a regional transit plan underway called Connect Beyond. CATS, we are advancing our 2030 rapid transit system plan. And we're also doing a bus priority study to understand where we can put improvements to our bus network system-wide. But all this started many years ago here in Mecklenburg County through a vision to implement a 5-quarter rapid transit system. It was originally called a transit and land use plan, and transit and land use have been integrated directly from the very beginning of all of CAT's efforts.
Hey, Jason, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt you again because I think it's on the wrong screen. We're seeing all of your PowerPoint slides, but not in presentation mode.
Okay.
I apologize.
No, it's okay. This worked yesterday. My apologies. Okay, that looks probably worse.
All I see is a black screen for now. There we go. There we go, Jason. I see a slide that says growth more than expected.
Okay, that's great because I'm not seeing on my side, so I'll just click the button.
All right, I'll keep you. If you need me to check, I can check for you.
Okay.
We can all see it now.
You can all see it now? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
thank you.
All right, cool. All right. So thank you very much, guys. Apologize for that. The story of Charlotte in our region certainly has been growth. We anticipated back in 2025 that we would be almost at 1 million people here in this county. And we blew that out of the water, by 2014, and are well past our growth, as you can see there on the screen. And so with that growth also comes challenges to make sure that we have the right mode split. And certainly TDM and advancing a transit plan is part and parcel with that. And we're not all about a rail system. Often here in our community, rail is something that people get very excited about. But like most transit agencies, over 80% of our ridership is generated from non-rail vehicles, such as van pool, streetcar, express bus, our paratransit, human services, coordination transportation, and our local and neighborhood shuttle routes. So to help support all those modes that I just showed you, we do have a TDM program that through our employer transportation coordination program with over 130 participants throughout the employment base here in Charlotte area. We also have a university pass program, and a number of passes sold in fiscal year 2020 was 71,038. And 3 of our top 4 employers in the Charlotte area are a part of our ETC program. And the elements of our TD program are discounts on transit passes, commuter tax benefit, our rideshare programs. We also help sponsor biking events like mentioned there. We have Biketoberfest, Charlotte Bike Week. We do, reach more than 50,000 people across transportation fairs in fiscal year 19. And then of course we have our KS van pool program. And our pass sales, as you can see there on the screen, have certainly have seen some ebb and flows throughout the time. But as we look at the different types of pass sales that we do have a diverse base of pass sales that we are pushing out throughout our community. We're also partnering with the state of North Carolina through a Share the Ride program. It's basically like a matchmaking site on North Carolina where you have different users and you can match people with their different trip profiles to carpool or van pool. We also do a Clean Air Week each year in the spring. And it's an annual campaign to educate the public about improving air quality and about all of our modes and opportunities to reduce your carbon emissions. We have ozone action days and a very active social media platform and contest through Clear Air Photo Contest, and then a Clean Commute Challenge. We also partner with a number of agencies across our region. We have 17 different fixed route transit agencies within the Charlotte area, and we partner with a couple of them in some of our light rail stations and our park and rides. We partner with some local advocacy groups called Sustain Charlotte. And then we're also partnering with in a regional effort called the Connect Beyond to do a consultation regarding TDM activities to be integrated into this regional plan. So that's our program. Those are the things that we're doing today for TDM, but we are also advancing our planning vision on multiple fronts through advancing a light rail program, through a design, TOD, and rail trail study. We're doing a bus priority study, a bus rapid transit study to towns north of Charlotte, And then overarching all of that is the Connect Beyond effort. And each of those are going to have some relationship with our development community as we seek to improve our ridership, but also make sure we're planning for the future inside each of our development options. The Envision My Ride effort is seeking to improve our bus network through a three-pronged effort for structure, frequency, and reliability. We've hit 2 of those, and now we're focusing on the reliability portion, which will seek to identify bus enhancements on major corridors to improve speed and reliability through bus-only lanes, queue jumpers, transit signal priority, and adjustments to bus stops, amenities, and spacing. And how does that relate to TDM? What does that mean when I say we're working with the development community? One big piece of that effort is to develop a micromobility and a mobility hub program for transit to do what transit does best. When we operate in straight solid lines in safe and reliable, efficient manner, and then come up with other modes and other connections at key points. And through that, we'll develop integrated first last mile applications, mobility hubs to accommodate multiple service needs, and essentially have a future-ready system adaptable to changing technologies. And we'll do that through a mobility hub program. Our relationship with the development community often is we will request a bus stop. We're getting to a point where we're asking for a mobility hub that can have multiple types of options at those bus stops. And so they can actually track the different types of uses that are at that stop other than just bike or bus. It could be ride share, it could be scooter share, any number of things to reduce the reliance on single occupancy vehicle. And we're developing these different types of options throughout from the bus stop all the way to the park and ride, and are codifying those in our unified development ordinance and also through our land development program. As you can see there, as we start rethinking the park and ride to accommodate different types of modes, and which also think we will be a key part of our TDM strategy going forward. So that's what we're doing on the bus side. We are also advancing our 2030 transit system plan. And I'll just briefly go over the different corridors. I mentioned before, we have a 5-corridor rapid transit system plan. 2 of those have been built. We have 19 miles of light rail across our community. We're advancing a 26-mile-long light rail project called the Link Silver Line, and we're in negotiations, hopefully at some point, to implement commuter rail to towns north of Charlotte called the Links Red Line, and then multiple BRT projects within our area, as well as looking to complete a 10-mile streetcar program. I mentioned a few times that the Connect Beyond effort, our regional transit initiative across 12 counties in 2 states. Through that effort, we have a TDM task to look at TDM and land use strategies across this entire region. It's a broad geography, it'll be very high level, but we do hope through this effort, we can start building the infrastructure in place for a regional TDM committee. Through guiding principles of creating mobility choice and preparing for future growth, advancing equity and aligning plans with local visions and planning for implementation will all help us achieve that regional TDM vision. And why are we doing and pushing for all these different things all at the same time? Because we think visions are important. And if you look at the places where Charlotte and this region are competing with, places like Austin and Atlanta, Denver, and Nashville are all either have pushed forward a regional initiative or have passed recent referendums, or in the case of Denver, advanced 5 capital programs all at the same time. We're looking to learn from each of these as we seek to become more regional in nature. And we're doing that through a vision that we started 25 years ago that led to a 1/2-cent sales tax that funds the corridor system plan that we have today. And then we're looking forward to the next 20 years for the Charlotte Moves Task Force, with the goal of building a transformational mobility network of rapid transit, bus priority, greenway and pedestrian systems, bike and roadway network improvements as well. And each of those we feel will be key in the part of creating a unique multi-jurisdictional TDM effort here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Because for us to be successful, and I think this does relate also to a TDM effort, that our infrastructure must be more inclusive and thoughtful, that all layers of mobility have to advance, not just the big stuff like light rail, but all the way down to micromobility and bus routes. And those opportunities must be integrated into each transit project and service proposal. And I'll wind out with a thank you and apologies for the confusion up front, and I'll hand it over to Lakisha.
All right, thank you so much for that, Jason. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. Casey, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see it? Perfect. Okay, so my name is Lakisha Hall. I'm with Charlotte Department of Transportation. I'm with the Development Services Division. And so I have the ability to look at the land development lens with the transportation lens. And my division works very close with Jason Lawrence on a lot of projects here in Charlotte. So what I'm going to do is provide 2 case studies that will be very close to how do you incorporate TDM in infill sites and sites that many cities and communities across the country are currently experiencing. So Jason touched on several things already about Charlotte. I just want to give you guys an idea. Charlotte is one of those cities that you don't really realize are in the South. And so we are in a metropolitan area that is very close to South Carolina. And so this gives you an idea of how big the city of Charlotte is. We're pretty close to our county boundary lines. This here gives you guys an idea of all the districts we have here. So there's a lot of coordination, as Jason alluded to. We have 7 council members, and we have a very big geography that we try to do a lot of our coordination in. When we look at mobility, we look at connections, we look at our different modes of transportation. And so we have a lot of culture here in Charlotte. So there's a lot of great things that we're trying to build on as our city is growing. Very, very busy slide, but this is a slide that planners probably love. It has a lot of data, statistics, all types of information, but this gives you an idea of just how much infrastructure is in Charlotte. We have 2,400 miles of streets. We have a lot of sidewalks. We have greenways. Our square mile is 305 square miles. And so for those folks that are on the West Coast, especially near the LA area, we're pretty substantial in size and land area for a population shortly shy of 900,000 people. We're a very young population here in Charlotte. And so the reason why I'm framing the 2 case studies this way is TDM is really all about making sure your audience can connect to those different modes of transportation. And so we have a very young population here, a lot of employers moving here to Charlotte. So these are things that we're really mindful of is the workforce we're trying to reach out to, the neighborhoods that we're trying to develop, and just the larger context of what Charlotte is trying to keep up with other cities. Our current toolbox includes various policies. And so what we do here in CDOT and also work with the planning department staff, we look at our current tools, right? And so with TDM, it's very important that we integrate all these modes with land use, with visions, with plans. And so we have the ability to make adjustments through our transportation impact studies, align it with the policies that council has adopted here in Charlotte. And so we recently updated our TOD ordinance. And so a lot of cities, of course, have their own version of TOD. And so we want to make sure that what we're doing is also intentional in creating different modes of options in these areas. So the 2 case studies are located in almost 2 different areas of the city. And so at the top is University City, at the bottom is Ballantyne. So moving real quickly, the University City area has one of our college campuses up there, 40,000 college students. It has a healthcare center, and then it also has a big employer area that we call University Research Park. This gives you some visuals of what one of the light rail station looks like in the University City area. University City Place is your typical strip mall development. And so we saw this project come a couple years ago where we were able to help to reimagine what an infill development site is going to look like. So as you can see, it has a Michael's here, a Ross, Sam's Club. And so our goal was to try to see how do we incorporate land use TDM strategies near a very robust transit network. So this is the plan that we received here at CDOT. We work close with planning and also with CATS to start seeing how do we really emphasize the network. And we have bike lanes, we have greenways. And so as they're infilling existing surface parking lots, we're very intentional of creating places where pedestrians, bicyclists, rideshare can safely get into the development. So these are some of the visuals of the area. And so this is just an idea of what the existing footprint looks like today versus what the plan was that was approved back in 2019 of what a transit-oriented development project looks like and how we're really trying to make sure that whatever is designed is very intentional to connect to our light rail station. The second case study is Ballantyne. And so this is in the southern portion of Charlotte. And so Ballantyne is one of those communities that grew out of pretty much agricultural land. And so this is a very unique case study because we have one landowner that has about 535 acres of land. It's comparable to our downtown area. And so we call our downtown here Uptown. And so that was the fun part that Jason and I was able to work together on this one to really say, because you have a big footprint for your campus, how do we incorporate TDM in a very intentional way? So this gives you an idea of what it looks like today. There's a nice hotel here on site, beautiful golf courses, a car lover dream. It's very auto-oriented. The plan itself was to develop over 3 phases, the 500 acres, and do more mixed use compact design, incorporate rideshare, incorporate the use of transit in the area. So really stitch together a very robust network. We did a couple sketches. And so this is kind of just thinking outside the box that our tools are not currently there yet. And some cities and communities may be there where you want to move into this direction, but you don't have the policies and regulations in place yet. And so as we're working with CATS and some of the other regional providers about what does the broader network look like here? What does it look like connecting to South Carolina? We really start using this opportunity as a way to use our transportation impact studies to really try to bolster up the multimodal and TDM focus here. So we did a workshop. So Jason and I, we worked on coming up with a toolbox of sorts. And so you saw in a couple of his slides what we were looking at and trying to incorporate TDM in this area. We looked at connections to express and commuter bus service out here. We even start to see how do we connect to park and ride opportunities that gets people safely to South Carolina. We looked at the bike and the pedestrian network as well. And then we even explored the opportunity to do a new light rail alignment with this project. So in closing, we ended up being able to reserve area for 3 stations. And this took a lot of time and coordination, but we were able to work with the developer, really brainstorm, roll up our sleeve, look at our policies and say, how do we incorporate in maybe the 10th or 15th year of this project, light rail, and what are the TDM things that we would want to see? And so we really pushed for a TDM manager or coordinator and really want the TDM plan itself to incorporate mobility hubs and other tools that would really help to make people access to transit a little bit easier in this area. And so with that, I will turn it over to Casey.
So efficient, Lakisha. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of our panelists this afternoon for a really job well done. Thank you. We're going to try to get to as many questions as we can in the next few minutes. If you do have a question for any of our panelists, please feel free to go ahead and type it in the Q&A box located in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. And please also note who the question is for when typing it in. Jay, I'm going to start with you here. And just first question, how did you get the data that you were reaching out to, and also what data did you collect to track the results?
So actually, it might sound kind of strange because we're working with the transit agencies, but we got the data from the transit agencies themselves. MTS is the San Diego agency that maintains and manages the data on the Compass card. So we work with a data analyst at MTS to get the data from them, and it was just basically a data download for us. And then what I did at that point was put it in an Excel spreadsheet and really tracked it. And I was able to track the cards that were activated and the number of trips that were taken in the first 30 days, the trips that were taken in the second 30 days, to see how many people continue to use transit, those type of things. So we got the data from MTS, from an analyst, and then I generally just used a spreadsheet to in Excel to track everything. But we also, when we have the events, our account executives track those specific events and details of those events in Salesforce, because we use Salesforce for our employer program.
Okay, great. This next one for you, Jay. How are employees tracking trips, and are you using a web platform to implement the incentive program?
So the employees are not really tracking their trips. We're tracking those trips for them. So we don't have a trip tracker. We did at one point, but we don't have a trip tracker anymore. So we just actually ask the employees to tap that Compass card on the reader every time that they ride, and then that will automatically generate their ride, and we'll get that data then from MTS when we ask for that download. And then, as I mentioned before, I just use the Excel spreadsheets, but we are using Salesforce to track the details of the events that we have in our employer program.
Okay. And Lakisha, I know there were some folks who've just already mentioned in the chat in the Q&A box. If we could hold that last screen up just so people could see all the Q&A information there. Yep. Thank you for the panelists in case anyone has a further question after this. I would throw this one out to the entire audience here. You know, I know we have both sides of the table here on this discussion topic. What are some of the biggest challenges, or just one challenge that each of you have faced in advancing kind of TDM from your side? And I'll start maybe with I'll give it to someone else. Jason, do you want to start maybe?
Sure. I think the challenge for us was starting to act and proactively develop a TDM program. I mean, CATS had a TDM effort that was, based on past sales and our existing services, but we weren't embedded within our unified development ordinances, or we weren't embedded into the development piece, so that developers were asking us for how to do TDM, but we didn't necessarily have the planning tools set up to make that a reality. So we've been playing a lot of catch up. I know I hit a lot of planning things, but the reason we're doing all that is so that we can help better inform Lakisha and their group, so that the developers can pull things off the shelf. Like, oh, this is how much a service will cost me. This is how much like a bus stop will cost me. This is what a mobility hub is. And so that's where we've been really focusing on the past couple of years now. And we've really been having to play catch up. That Valentine example was literally on the fly, creating a TDM proposal for that group. So it's been an interesting effort.
I bet. Lakisha, do you have anything to add to that?
I want to just ditto that. And then the other part is that our council members change every 2 years here in Charlotte. And so trying to get them to focus on something innovative like TDM is something that we are also charged with. But we're really, really optimistic that we can continue to move forward with our UDO and our comp plan to incorporate more of these strategies.
Okay, great. Ronit, what about from your side?
And first of all, I'd just like to say that I'm fascinated by the presentations that have been here today. I'm very honored to be on this panel. We are fortunate in Tysons that under the comp plan that was input in 2010, a lot of TDM is part of the development. It is a little challenging because it is phased, so we're not getting everything that we would like. I think our biggest challenge is sort of representing the consumer side, so to speak, to the transit agency. And I think it's sort of, transit agencies have got lots of different priorities, and, making a budget, and, keeping up with maintenance and capital expenditures, and sort of, and what we dealt with this past summer or so was representing the consumer side of, how inconvenience affects ridership, what that means to people's ability to take transit, willingness to take transit in the future. I think going forward, sort of the biggest challenge that both sectors will face is sort of transitioning to some extent from what has been a very 9 to 5 Monday through Friday based system with not a lot of service off peak, to a slightly different world where we may have a lot more people working from home, a lot more flexible schedules. How do both the public sector and the private sector make that switch?
Excellent. Thank you for that. Jay, I'll end with you. Anything else to add to that?
Well, just in terms of the program that I talked about today with transit, you're really trying to find the right incentive to get people to make that change in their commute, whether they might say they're interested in it, but what will actually get them to actually make that change to do it. So we had this program with Tri-Transit, or with our van pool subsidy. We have a $400 per month subsidy there, or we have we work with our vendors to actually bring the vehicles out on site to some of these work locations so people can sit in the vehicle and really see themselves in that commute. And so we've been doing that. So we're trying to find ways that can really fit the need of each one of the individuals at these employer sites, that so they can see themselves making the change into an alternative mode.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much. I want to thank you, all our panelists, since we've already reached the top of the hour. Again, for a job well done. We really appreciate all your valued insight today. Want to let everyone know that we do have another upcoming webinar this month on Thursday, March 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be a preview of Project Cul-de-sac, which is the first car-free neighborhood in the United States. That is going to be sponsored by the ACT Valley of the Sun chapter, so we thank them. And registration is now open up on the ACT website, and we'll be beginning promotion early next week for it. So stay tuned and be on the lookout. And once again, I want to thank all my panelists today for another well done, and we look forward to seeing you all again on March 25th. Thank you and have a great afternoon.